Hi, I'm Sandy Babb. Welcome to my studio. I wanted to share a flip through of the journal that I made for the February Fabric Junk Journal Challenge hosted by Dear Julie here on YouTube. This is the second challenge that I've done with Julie, and I really enjoyed this one, but this one did challenge me, which is so funny because the one last month you had far less choices to make your journal, and I struggled less with that than I did with having more choices this time. So I thought that was quite funny. But the premise of the challenge is you were supposed to have 15 fabric functions to your journal. You're supposed to have a fabric cover, a fabric flip, a fabric page, 2 fabric page edges, 2 either pockets or tucks, 4 tags that incorporated fabric, and 4 fabric embellishments. The main part of this challenge was fabric. Any kind of fabric. It could be old clothing, it could be new, recycled, whatever, kind of fabric you wanted to use. And your lace, tulle, and ribbon did not count as fabric. Those were extras, but just any kind of fabric. And so we were given a list of things that you could use for your choices. And if I understood, I struggled a little bit with the directions a little bit. It was a little confusing for me, but I think if I read this right, that I stayed within the parameters of the challenge, except for I did have a cheat, and I'll explain that as I go along. But okay, we were allowed 5 like copy paper, and it could be dyed. So here's what I used on mine. I used 5. I did use, let's see, I think I've got mine written down. Okay, yeah, I used 5 pieces of the tea dyed paper. I used a combination of 5 pieces of lined or ledger paper. I only used 1 sheet of this little lined paper right here, and this was my ledger paper, but I used the back side of it because it was just solid green. So I used 4 sheets of this and 1 sheet of this. For scrapbook papers, I used these 3 papers here, a burlap and 2 different wood tones, and so I used 1 sheet of each of those. So there was those. Then this was my digital sheet. These are Kate Greenaway images. I have a program, a Dover publication program, and I just lined my sheet as full as I could of digital images, and I did use about 1.5 sheets. So I'm not sure if that's a cheat, because I'm not sure if we were allowed 1 digital sheet or if we could use scrapbook paper and then a digital sheet. I was a little foggy on that. So I did use 1.5 sheets of images on my journal. Then we were allowed book pages. So I used a little bit of each of these 2 pages, a dictionary page and a shorthand exercise book. And then I used 3 of these pages from a journal. It was just a bound book that had quotes and stuff, and it had places you could write. And I took the book apart and used some of the yellow lined paper out of my book pages. We were allowed to use some printed lightweight cardstock, and I used this pink and green and blue. And we were allowed to use some, I used 1 sheet of each of those. We were allowed to use some plain cardstock, any color. So this was where I wasn't sure if I cheated, because I used 1 sheet of yellow, 1 sheet of the blue, 1 sheet of the green. But I used 3 sheets of the, I don't know what you call that. What do you call that card? It looks like a paper bag. I don't know, there's a name for whatever that is. But anyway, I did use 3 sheets of that. So I wasn't sure if that was kind of a cheat or not, because if I read the rules right, if I understood it right, everything was 5. You could use 5 of all your papers per signature. So if that's the case, then I didn't cheat. Okay. So any tags that I used in this book, I used just coffee dyed shipping tags. And I think I used 3 of these on part of my I used 3 of them in the book, and then some of these were part of a challenge, and then some of them were part of the tags. So it's kind of confusing there. I used 1 paper doily, and I found out I really don't like paper doilies, so I won't be doing that again. I used, this is where I had too many things, and I didn't realize it until I was done, because I used 3 of these little polka dot bags, and one bag like this of vellum, a dyed, that's not vellum. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, the crinkly bags. And then I used 1 blue envelope, 1 stationery envelope that was dyed, and 1 of these vintage bank envelopes. Okay, so I think that might have went over because I think we were only supposed to have a combination of 5 of those, and I ended up with 7. So anyway, that was probably my cheater things. Now, my real cheat was buttons. I did get too many buttons on mine. I'm apologizing, Julie. It was necessary. The tools I used in this challenge, I used a paper trimmer, a pair of scissors, a pinking shear, sewing machine, cream thread, 1 text rubber stamp, 2 ink pads, 1 was potting soil, and 1 was, I can't remember the name of it. It's a dark brown. I think it's timber brown. And a distress tool. I used a ruler, a stencil, some gesso, and for adhesives I used score tape, tacky glue, Fabri-Tac, and a glue stick. And here is my monster journal. Now I'm going to call this journal a jot journal. Let's go in a little bit. Let's see, get maybe about right there. Yeah, maybe a little more. I'm going to call this a jot journal. And the reason why I'm calling it that is because there is room for writing in this book, but this is really a textile book. It's really heavy on textiles. And the spots where you have for writing, there are numerous things you can do, but it's something where you would jot something down, something short, a scripture, a quote, a little, word, or, something very short but meaningful. So this is going to be more like what I'm going to call a jot journal. This journal gave me a lot of trouble. It was not an easy journal to make. It measures 6 by 9, and it is a hulking 3.5 inches thick. I mean, look at that spine. It's pretty thick. So, I love creating textiles. I love working with textiles. So, to start off, to create my journal thing, I took scraps of fabric, and I can show you some of the fabrics that I used here if you just want a little sneaky peek. Mostly these right here, and a little bit more. I don't have any here, but I have some canvas, but I pretty much used it up. But that was kind of my fabric base right there, and some cheesecloth. I started out by creating on some burlap my own textile of a patchwork cover for the front and the back. Okay, now it looks like I changed thread, and I actually did not. These were pieces that were cut off in my scraps, and I just glued those on. So if you see anything with brown stitching, that is not a cheat. Okay, I created this textile by using my text stamp on muslin. Then I used some batting and another piece of muslin, and I stitched this pattern so it would look quilted. So that's how I got my spine fabric. Then the front of this, I did a very layered collage, and I have a piece of tatting that my friend made, and some velvet ribbon and vintage laces, and one of the Kate Greenaway images. And this is also trimmed in gimp to cover up any of the raw edges. It has a vintage mother of pearl buckle that you can close it with. And let's take a peek inside her. Okay, it has 6 signatures, and I know that sounds weird, 6, it's like not many, especially considering that there are 2 pages each. So, but I'll explain that as we go along. So when you first open the book, you're going to open to a page that is covered with burlap and lace, a vintage linen napkin that was turned into a pocket. This is one of my fabric embellishments. Now there were a couple of challenges in here. So the hand beading, anytime you see the hand beading, that came from one of the challenges. So I'll kind of go in on that so you can see it better. It's just a cluster that I made out of just some paper and snippets of fabric and ribbon, a handmade muslin rose, and then a little hand beaded leaves. And so that was for one of the challenges to make a fabric, embellishment, sorry. This video is going to be crazy, I guess, because I'm not doing it very well, am I? And in the front, you're going to see another little hand beaded clip that was part of the challenge. And this is just a little booklet that was sewn together. And it's filled with one of the pieces of graph paper. Just a little booklet you can write in. And on the first page, this was one of my fabric tags. It's also clipped on here with one of the little beaded clips. And this is another textile that I made just by sewing different pieces of fabric and stuff together. And the tag itself has a little pocket on the back, and this has a index card, a vintage index card, a big one that I cut down. And you could also take a permanent pen or something and write on the back of this tag, but it has a little tuck there so you can actually use the tag. I did my pages in a couple different ways. This one is something on it. This one is the tea paper. I've stamped it with my text stamp. I've glued down a little bit of book pages and gessoed it just a little bit, and then added my fabric things to it. So I've got a little image here with some little pieces of scrapbook paper and a button and some fabric, and a little fabric cluster tab at the corner. And I'm just going to stuff things back in the page where they go, and I'll put them back later, but I'll at least put them where they go. Okay. Next page, we have this really pretty bound using this vintage silk acid green ribbon. And one of the images, this was, since this one has beads on it, this was also a portion of the challenge to make some embellishments, and you could use beads. So that was one of the embellishments. It's got a little envelope notebook in it that's just made out of the blue scrapbook paper. And it's just filled with scraps of all the papers that I had left over, a variety of the papers. And the image serves as a closure. And on this one, I used the back of the green ledger, stenciled it, stamped it, collaged it, gessoed it. Now you could write on these backgrounds. These are absolutely, you could write over them. So, but like I said, this is more what I'm considering to be a jot journal. There's lots of little spaces. This was that large envelope that I showed you in the beginning, and I cut it in half and bound it and kind of cut it down. Did some stamping, some gesso, some collage, and I used that doily on this, and mercy me, I did not like that doily. And inside each one, I'm just not thrilled with how that came out. It's just got a little fold out of the tea paper that you could do, but I wasn't thrilled with that doily, working with that doily. The thing is, kind of tears up. A little bit of the images. I did a lot of layering. I went back old school. Remember when scrapbooking, you know, everybody was doing layers of matting and stuff, so I kind of went back and did a little bit of that. And here's the other side of that. This one just has an image, and then this one has a little pocket, and inside it's got a little tiny little tiny notebook, teeny tiny, and some folded paper, some folded ledger, and it's also got just a couple of pieces of the, sorry, the back of that page was purple, but I probably need to go back and cover that. Now that I thought I covered everything, I'll go back and cover that with some book page or something so it matches. This is a piece out of that book. This is one of my edge finishes that was a requirement. Just a big fabric collage, really lush collage. This page has a tag tuck. This was one of the challenges, to make a fabric, some sort of a fabric, I think it was a fabric tag. That had to be a tag that had a fabric embellishment, and I decided to use it like a tuck spot. So I glued it in the book. It's got a little collage up here, and this is just a piece of the green cardstock that I had left over that you could write on. This is a, gosh, I cannot think of what to call these envelopes, these crispy ones, and I keep trying to think. And I tried to stabilize them by using a collage on both sides because I felt like the envelope was kind of delicate. And inside, all I did was take some scrap cardstock and just inked it on both sides. And that was all the colors that I used in this book. And I just slid them inside here so that you could write there on that. And some of the images I cut apart. This was the Mary had a little lamb, and I cut her in 3 pieces so I could make this and this page. Here's the other side of the Mary with the little lamb. This is my fabric page. It's made out of a piece of canvas. I'll pull this all off. It's just a piece of canvas, and I used some textiles to make a pocket and repeated that pocket on the other side, and I've pinned in another one of these tags with the journaling spot and a large piece of the cardstock. And then I used a little scrap. Here's another one of those embellishments. I used this little scrap to make a tiny little book that's just clipped inside the pocket there. I'll just shove all that in there and move on. Here's the other side. It's just the same. It's cardstock, the tag, another little booklet, another paper clip. That was one of our challenge things. This is another one. This paper clip has the beading and all that, and this was part of one of our challenges that we can make. And it holds shut this old bank envelope, and the bank envelope opens up, and there's actually writing pages inside. And then also the top of the bank envelopes are a pocket. Here's one of my little stitch tags. Just has some of the little fabric scraps. Oh, I used 2 rubber stamps. I forgot about the bird. I totally forgot about you stamping that bird. Okay, I used 2 rubber stamps, not 1. That goes, just tucks inside there. The other side, well, let's see. I've got this to where on this side, I don't like to see the back of the paper clip. So this is just a little thing I can hide the paper clip, because I can slide it between the paper clip, the envelope, and the little piece, and that way when it's clipped on there, it just looks like a cute little piece of the page, and I don't have to look at the back of that paper clip. This was another tag that was done for part of the fabric tag challenge, and it has a little fabric pocket on it and a fabric handmade flower. It has a teeny tiny little book in the pocket. I also glued it down and made it into a tuck for just a piece of that book page. And then this page is a kind of a flip page. It has 2 little bags and a tag. You can write here. I've given you some writing space. And on the other side, you can write on the tag. You could write on the bag, and you can pull out little journal spots that could be a little hidden journaling in there. So there's that. Then this page, I'm sorry this didn't display very good. I had a little issue with the binding. It was not supposed to be bound this way. So I'm kind of trying to hold the book where you can see it maybe. This page has a ledger tuck, one of the images, some little beads, and ribbon making a collage. It's got a piece of graph paper, or line paper, I guess you would call it, and that just tucks in there. Another little scrap of the cardstock that I had left to tuck in there. More little fabric tabs. This page has a tag pocket with a little fabric cluster and another fabric cluster and an image. It also has just a little bag with a piece of my cardstock. I really only use this cardstock in sparing amounts for more like matting than anything in here, so I had quite a bit of it left to just use as a journal. Here's that blue envelope, and I made a little closure for it and glued a little piece of lace flower on there, and it just has a a fold out sheet that you can write on. You can stick more stuff in there if you want to. That kind of tucks behind there. The back of the envelope has a pocket. Gosh, I feel like this isn't filming well. I'm going to photograph it for you, so maybe we can do better there. And this just has a piece of the paper that you can write on. It's a little pocket. This is my fabric flip, and more of the fabric tabs. And my flip opens up to reveal a little pad of paper made from the lined children's writing practice paper. So you've got that there. Then on this page, we've got another pocket, and this is another paper clip. This has the little hidden thing on the back, but I just thought that this page seemed kind of plain, so I kind of made it where you could hide the clip in this, or it can be moved to somewhere else in the book. But I did, well, I'll clip it back in a minute. This has just more cardstock, and then this was a fabric tag that I also did as part of the fabric tag challenge, and you can write on the back of it. And so there's that. Another page that mimics one earlier with the fabric edging with all the different fun fabrics, and a big journaling spot. And then we have a belly band on this page, and inside the belly band we've got a little piece of the cardstock, a larger piece of the tea paper, and another fabric tag. And I handmade this textile. I love to make textiles, and so this was a fun challenge for me. And you can write on the back. I lined it so you can write on the back of it. Now it tucks back in there. Then we're to this page, and it's another little tuck spot. Has another one of the little fabric tags and just some, cardstock, more fabric embellishments. I hope I'm not rushing through this, but it seems like it's taking a long time. Another pocket here at the back, and it also just has scraps left, and it has the pocket tag also. And these 4 tags were my original 4 tags, and then Julie did a tag challenge, so I ended up with a lot of tags after the tag challenge, so it was like a lot of tags. And here is the back, where you see another vintage napkin that was used for this, and it has a little flip book in it. This was I had 4 of these kind of Project Life cards. I didn't like the back, so I covered them with the scrapbook paper. And you can write on both sides of those, but this little book opens up, and you've got a journaling spot. You can journal on the pocket. You could journal on this. You could even write behind there if you want to. And then this flips up, and here you have 2 more journal. Whoops, am I out of range? 2 journal cards here. And I think these were Project Life cards, but I'm not sure. Or they may have been the Hobby Lobby knockoff version of a Project Life card. I'm not sure. And then this also flips open this way. So you have all these journaling spots. So this is the inside and this is the outside. So every portion of this little flip book is usable to journal with. And you can just tuck the whole thing in there. And again, there's the quilted back with a little lace. We will buckle her up and call her done. Thank you, Kate Greenaway, one of my favorite illustrators from the past, for your beautiful images that I think really set this book off. And just wanted to thank Julie for the challenge. And I hope that you will join me around the studio for whatever project's next. So thanks for joining me.